YouTube. My name is Stacy and I am the owner of S.C.Whimsies, and I am a silversmith. I live in Northwest Florida, and I am also an Air Force wife. So we have been in the military for 18 years now, and this career field has definitely posed some, interesting challenges as a metalsmith and trying to establish a business in the different places we go, and also to move all of my professional gear and set up a new studio everywhere we go. We have moved quite a few times in the last 5 years. We've moved 4 times, so I have had to adapt to 4 different studios, but thankfully my husband is tremendously supportive and always makes it a priority to get my shop set up first thing when we get to a new location. So I was a social worker for many years, but I've been making jewelry since I was a teenager, very long time ago. And my love of metal started in a high school art class, and they had a metalsmithing component to that class, and that is when I knew that I wanted a future in that and working with metal. So I have a pretty broad range of skills and knowledge in metalsmithing, but what I mostly love to do is lost wax casting. So I thought that I would give you a tour of my studio, and ultimately I would love to put together some simple to follow tutorials that I know there are a plethora of videos on YouTube. So some of the videos I do, I'm hoping will provide some new information for people, maybe other metalsmiths, techniques that you may not have thought of. And many of the techniques that I use are, just an example of one of many ways to accomplish the same task. So I am excited to embark on a YouTube journey, and hopefully you'll be able to inspire some other metalsmiths and connect with other artists out there as well. So what I would like to do in this video is just give you a tour of my workspace and some of the tools that I use and love on a daily basis. And I am open to any questions that you might have regarding any tools that I use or products that I love, and I will be available for that. So okay, and the power just went out, so let's pause. Okay, this is where I do all of my casting. So I have these shelves that are full of molds that I still need to catalog. I keep my investment powders over here, my wax, any of my glass grinding supplies I keep over here. And here is where I have my 2 kilns that I use. When I have them in use, I will have my cords propped up with tags. And there is my vacuum machine, which I will use for vacuum casting, as well as using to get the air bubbles out of the investment. I use a Nacraft centrifuge, which I absolutely love, and I have it bolted to my workbench here, and that gives me a very solid cast every time. Here I have my de-waxer. It's a steamer, so it opens up, so usually that will get, I'd say, about 95, if not more, % of the wax out. It fills with water, it boils, and it melts the wax out. So once I get to burnout in the kiln, most of the wax is already out of the flask, which is fantastic. I also make some of my own molds, and I have molds that I use very regularly. These are from IKEA. They are fantastic for organizing, and so I have a lot of my molds organized up here. My wax injector, which is my favorite, is by Pepe Tools, and it is just a hand pump one. So that will fill it with the pressure, and it is very easy to inject my jewelry molds. I would say a majority of my jewelry molds I get from eBay. I have also bought them from other retired jewelers, and I have thousands of them. And one thing I really enjoy as far as working with wax is you can take the images of multiple wax models and you can wax weld them together, you can alter them. So even with just a few molds, you can create multiple designs. It's always important, especially when working with investment, to use proper mass. And I do this in my garage. So when I'm working, when I'm casting, when I'm firing, I have my garage door open to give me enough ventilation. And I have little fans that I will come and prop up as well. So a lot of my future instruction on here will be, let me turn this around, will be on lost wax casting. And if you saw any tools in my studio or anything that you were interested in, please let me know, and I'm happy to do some demonstrations using those tools as well. Okay, in this portion I will give you a tour of my studio. So this is inside of my house. We converted our dining room into a studio, and then all of my casting equipment is in the garage. So here I keep my flex shaft. This is a bracelet, like a bracelet mandrel, but I use it more to put my phone on. So, but I have my draw plates, my vise, which I use very regularly, all of my files, and all of my different forging and forming equipment. My hammers and my pliers and my rolling mill. Over here is where I usually do my repousse and chasing work, which I really, really love. It's probably one of my most favorite things to do. I love to collect hammers, and I love just all of the variety of tips that you can buy or make yourself. So I really, really enjoy that. Typically when I have an order, I will inject the wax. I have thousands of jewelry molds, so I will typically take notes, and then I will inject the wax, put them in bags, get them all organized, and then I'll usually have a base for each type of metal that I'm going to cast in. So in this instance, I will be casting in sterling silver, pewter, and bronze. So I will have everything marked and separate, but that way I can mix enough investment to be able to cast all three. Usually I use a centrifuge when I do sterling, and I will use a vacuum, the vacuum chamber for the bronze and pewter. And then over here is where I typically do my wax work. So I have a little tip that will get hot, and I can also dip it in wax there. I have my matte wax gun, which I really enjoy. I will also provide a video on that at a future time. This is my soldering station and line punch. Got to give you props for this tool. I have thoroughly enjoyed using that, and I will also be incorporating that into a future video. Since I work from home, I prefer to use an oxygen machine, so I was able to get this one refurbished from a glass supply company, and it already came adapted to be able to connect to my torch. So that I feel is a good, safe alternative to have in my house, and I have thoroughly enjoyed that, and not having to buy oxygen tanks. So I use that and propane. And I also use this with MAP gas when I do my casting. So here are some examples of some pieces that I designed recently. And over here, I love Pepe tools. So I've got my my plater, my pen plater over here, which I love to plate things. So I have that over there. And for Kimbo, I've got my little heating plate there too. And this is where I do all of my tumbling. I've got my pickle pot and my ultrasonic over here. And then up here high, I keep a lot of my chemicals, my etching fluids, things like that. I have my buffing station over here. And then there, if I'm doing any type of costume type jewelry, a repair, I will typically use this. It's a vintage instrument and I absolutely love it. And this thing I can plug in and actually use for pouring pewter right into jewelry molds. So it is very old, but I do use it, and I do use this soldering machine as well. And if anybody is interested in learning more about that, I would be happy to do a demonstration. So I will go from here into my garage where my casting studio is. So that is a brief tour of my studio and my casting operation in the garage. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I will try to get back to you as quickly as I can. And as many other moms out there going through a pandemic, I'm busy homeschooling during the day and also a military wife, so my husband has been deployed through all of this. So, so we are keeping busy during the day, but I would love to answer any questions that you might have and explain any tools. I am very much the tool collector, and I would say probably 80% of the tools that I have, especially those tools that are that I use for casting, those are all used tools that I found on eBay. And when I decided that I wanted to venture into lost wax casting, I knew that was going to be a very expensive setup. So it took me probably 2 to 3 years and a lot of patience and watching eBay of every day and other auctions to be able to acquire the necessary equipment to be able to do lost wax casting. Each piece of equipment is very expensive if you buy it brand new, but if you're patient and you watch every day on eBay, you can find good deals on casting equipment and kilns and centrifuge. They're very, there are different types of centrifuges, but I prefer the Nacraft one. And same with rolling mills. So eBay is definitely a good place to go to look for tools and vintage hammers. If you want to try repoussé and chasing, that is also a good place to find sets of tools for that. So I think that is it. And please let me know if you have any questions, and I will be on here soon with my first tutorial.